a red flag flying here.
Hello everyone, here we are. You join just as my amazing team are mocking the life out of me. I won't tell you which person was guilty of it, but you'll be able to tell from the look on their face, okay? And sort of, and I deserve every bit of it. And before we start, the other thing I do have to say is just to give credit to Paul, who is just unbelievable, and he's the person who's first in. He sets it all up, sort of when it was the radio I was doing all the knobs and everything, and sort of, which was why it was such a disaster. And Paul is the person who's the tech guy for this, and I just sort of roll in and ask people questions. It's sort of, so it's all down to him. Thank you so much, Paul. You are so appreciated. And before we, so hello, Paul. And but so before I go on any further as well, talking about dailies, sort of, we're still missing Laura. She's still poorly. Can you give us an update on this, please?
Yeah. So the doctors think it's long COVID that she's got, and also now I am officially locked down because I've come into contact with someone who's positive in my work. I don't know how that happened, given that I work in a school and COVID won't come into classrooms. It refuses, it stays in the corridor. And also our son has been sent home and is now self-isolating for 14 days because he's coming into contact at nursery. So the education system's going really well. So yeah.
I'm going to just say something about this, because I'm only saying hello, but I was getting mad at Barbara today because they're clamping down further and further, and they're saying things are going wrong and things are going wrong, and we've got to stop this and stop that and stop the other, and sort of shouting at people that are not trying hard enough. And anybody with a brain can see where it's all going wrong, and they've got us fighting a war when they're letting the cause of the problem go unaddressed, we're losing, and it's not our fault. But there we go. Hi, Stuart. Okay.
How are you doing? I'm good. Yeah.
Hello, Samantha.
Hi.
Hi. Right. Okay. Let's go. Moment of the week. I'm going to start with the
so smooth.
It's just I'm not working the knobs anymore. Stuart, moment.
You waited till I picked the drink up. Yeah, I wanted to talk about
just this veneer of professionalism which the entire show oozes.
Absolutely.
Stuart, what's your moment of the week, Stuart?
This week, 2 of the local Tory MPs had posted some social media. Actually, one was a TV interview, and there's some slightly cringe photos of them. It's got a bit of public reaction. I don't know if Paul's going to show them.
Oh.
Yeah, it's out now.
Yeah.
Now, sort of, I mean, the first picture here is, I mean, we've got to be so careful here, because Tories do not like even the most good-natured fun being poked at them. But what makes this just so amusing, and it wasn't intentional, is it just makes her look as though she has the most huge shoulders, doesn't it? Makes her look like some bodybuilder.
And to be fair, she did take it really well. She's
smashing
at dealing with this sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, the thing is that sort of we all have our big moments, and that wretched chair got just there to spoil it all. So anyway, and the other one,
yeah,
is that working?
Gibson.
Has that worked?
Not yet.
Hang on then. Let's see what I can do. See if I can work the magic.
Okay.
There it is.
I'll explain the response that he got. It was, as you can imagine, as he tried to prove that he was a little bit northern, and he fits in with the rest of us. Twitter didn't take too kindly to this, some of it was good humour, some of it was just nasty trolling. But I think the thing that really got up people's backs was the comment that went alongside with it, where he called Boris Johnson the boss, which I think is perhaps wrong when in reality it's, Joe Public, your average resident who is the boss.
I like the comment on this one though, which was like, can you not afford a flagpole? It's like typical sort of backdrop for social media, isn't it? Let's just like hang these up on a thing somewhere.
Also, that's the County Durham flag.
It is.
And is that Darlington's? Should Darlington be flying our flag?
Controversial.
Historically, Darlington used to be in County Durham, but sort of.
They don't want no part of us now.
It was. I couldn't understand this because was he not just playing to this kind of southern kind of stereotype that we're all Northerners have flat caps and breed whippets? I mean, wasn't that sort of a kind of culturally deprecating, amusing comment?
Possibly. I don't know if it was done in parody. You can never really pick up on what people's intentions were when they put out social media posts. I feel like this was just really poorly timed and thought out. The response is hilarious. There's some really standout comments.
Peter Gibson, the MP for Darlington, Anne. That's yeah.
So I just have never seen anybody look less comfortable in a flat cap.
It's brand new, so it's all itchy.
So anyway, there was no unpleasantness intended. Sort of the other day, if you'll remember, I went on looking like Inspector Gadget, and and everybody had very rude things to say about the latest detective series I was going to take part in. So there we go. So it's all a bit of fun. Sam, what's your moment of the week?
Me. Well, today is the 3rd birthday of the Women's Banner Group. The Women's Banner Group is a project that I push forward with Laura Daly, who has a husband somewhere. And yes, and we're very, very proud. In 3 years, we've managed so much. We've got we're in 2 films. We have, rubbed shoulders with many MPs, and we're at the moment we're in the middle of a campaign to make misogyny a hate crime.
Yes.
We've got
talk to us more about that.
Yes. So this is something that has
just
been...
for some people who may, what is misogyny, and why do you want to make it a hate crime?
Yeah. So currently, if you attack or harass somebody because of their sexual orientation, or because of their trans, or because they are black or non-white, if it's racially motivated, that's all a hate crime. But if you harass or attack or abuse somebody because they're a woman, it's not classed under hate crime legislation, and that surprises a lot of people, because of course women are protected under the Equality Act for lots of things, but for some reason didn't get put in the actual definition of a hate crime. So the argument is that it should be there, that women's experiences are different than men's, and there's lots of complicated stuff going on.
Seconds, Sam. I mean, this week I've had cause to look up an age is a protected characteristic. Are you telling me that the female being female is not a protected characteristic?
Not under hate crime legislation, it's not.
It is a protected characteristic, or like gender or sex
for
is
equality, yeah.
For equality, so under the Equalities Act.
Under the Equality Act, but not under the Hate Crime Act.
Yes, exactly.
And where do we get at the? Are you going to put a link to this petition onto the chat?
We can do, yes. Currently, it's got so far, we are really quite late to the party, but we're happy to help push it over the line, because it is now with the Law Commission, who are recommending law, and they are consulting on it. So it will be great if people can look at that, and if people can engage with the Women's Banner Group. We've got a meeting on the 10th of December, which is open to everybody and is going to be on Zoom, where you can help us decide what our contribution to the Law Commission is going to be. And then, of course, it gets recommended to go to Parliament, and it's down to the MPs. As you know, we have a Conservative Parliament, so now it's about getting Tories to understand why this is important and getting them to buy into it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. And I'm sure that Sam will be putting the relevant links and everything onto the chat. She can multitask, can Sam, in a way that I can't. Moment of the week, Paul.
I have a few that I would like that I would struggle to choose from,
Just
but
the
I'm
one.
just gonna. I'll just go for one, which is that it's the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC, which have been in the news lately, have appointed a man named David Goodhart as one of their commissioners. There are 9 of them, I believe, at the moment, of which 8 are white. So this is the thing that the body that makes a judgment on whether things are racist or against human rights. Now, it's very interesting because they are currently, and I don't know why it's taken them so long, they are currently investigating the hostile environment, which was Theresa May's flagship policy as Home Secretary when she was Home Secretary, and she sent go home vans around London.
Yes.
And those kind of things. And also it was considered to be a lot to blame for the Windrush scandal. The vast majority of people think that was an absolute travesty, where real British citizens who had been British citizens for their entire lives, because remember, people from Jamaica, etc., were British citizens, even though they came from Jamaica. That was part of the British Empire at the time. And they came over to help the NHS and what have you. Anyway, this journalist called David Goodhart is the head of immigration and integration at the right-leaning policy exchange think tank. He's been selected for this despite the fact that he is a huge supporter of the hostile environment. He's praised the measures introduced by the then Home Secretary Theresa May. He is not particularly well aware of issues on race. Well, he is well aware of them. He just has very different views to what I would consider to be positive views about racial integration and supporting people of different races. He argued that white self-interest, so discriminating favorably towards white people, is not the same thing as racism. And what a very, very strange appointment. The person who signed off on this is Liz Truss, the Tory minister, who many would argue would have an interest in this Equality and Human Rights Commission finding in favour of the government. And just as a side note, there's another member of that commission who was a heavy Tory donor as well. So it's quite an interesting mix on that body, the mix of commissioners on there. It's really not what you would expect.
I think all our listeners would agree that it's essential that the Equality and Human Rights Commission is absolutely solid against racism. It's I find what you said horrific. Anyway, I'm going to move on, not because that isn't worthwhile discussing, but because it's time for...
Now it's time for the big story.
And the big story today, I thought it would be Trump, but I was wrong. It isn't. We're going to deal with that after the break. We're going to, the big story is the departure of Cummings and Kane. And I suppose, Sam, my first question has to be, is there any substance to this story whatsoever, or is it just a photo op?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because, when I talked to my husband about this, when I said, oh, look, Dominic Cummings is leaving, he said, I already knew he was going to leave in December, because he told us months ago he was going to leave in December. So it's like, has this all been trumped up to
Wrong topic, Sam. So
has it all been, is it just a case of finding something to fill the newspapers and to make sure that there is no mystery about it, you know, like you said, the photographs of him with his box leaving Downing Street. I mean, there is absolutely no way on earth that if he was working in that building, all of his possessions were in that box. There's absolutely no reason he had to leave by the front door. There's
If I could just
absolutely
interrupt you, I put on Facebook that when I left Greenfield, I took
Yeah.
2 carloads of stuff home, all mine, that I'd just taken into work with. But I took one of the things that was they'd given me this teacher with complete with a mortarboard and gown made up of balloons. It was so big I couldn't fit. It was more than lifestyle. I couldn't fit it in the car. We had to fold it in half to put it in the car. How you would have got that on the bus, I don't know. So yes, I agree. I was. How do people fit everything in a box? I think it's just.
they always look quite flimsy boxes as well. It's like, what are you
Yes, the bottom's going to fall out
not
of those.
many pieces of paper.
So
So
is there I mean, is this a political earthquake? Is my question.
I mean, obviously it is interesting, whether it's news or not. The question is, and another thing that people are talking about now is like, yeah, this is the other end of Cummings, like the end of Cummings when he got shuffled out of the education department when he used to work under Gove. You know, he's one of these guys. He's always going to fall on his feet. He's always going to find somewhere where he's got a lot of pies that he can stick his thumbs into. You know, and also there is going to be somebody else. You know, unfortunately, don't have a lot of faith in Boris Johnson to have his own ideas. So there's going to be somebody else pulling the levers. And kind of these people, Lee Cain and Dominic Cummings, were very focused on Brexit, very focused on reforming the civil service. And in many ways, their work is done. And kind of the die's being cast. So I also have a problem with this story, by the way.
Pardon?
I also have a problem with the reporting of the story.
Right, tell us briefly, yes.
About how Carrie Symonds is being used in all this. Now, there's been a lot of, and obviously there's this thing of like, what is the final straw? What is the final straw for Boris? The final straw is calling his girlfriend a nasty name, but it's more than that. The media are talking like, oh, his girlfriend said he had to sack Lee Cain, so he did. Well, she's not just his girlfriend, is she? She's a big deal in terms of the Conservative Party, and she's got a right to a professional opinion. And also, maybe if you are throwing around misogynistic comments at work, you should be sacked.
Thank you. Indeed, that's smashing. Stuart, do you think that this is the beginning of the end of Boris? This is, so I'm trying to get to kind of the political aspect of it. Sort of, I mean, is this part of detaching his supporters before you move against him, or something else?
I think COVID was the end of Boris, because the type of politician that Boris is like this fun-loving, crazy liberal inside the Conservative Party, and he wants less government and less restrictions, and we don't want to be in your business. And he's had to preside over the toughest restrictions that probably Britain's seen since World War II. Now, all his natural allies, who are a bit more liberal leaning, have suddenly become his natural enemies while he's, in charge of this. So I think he's trying to get back to who he was before COVID, to side with certain people. And it's like this divergent path where eventually the party and Boris are going to separate, and he's going to need to be replaced. I think that's probably why
telling me,
Cummings
Stuart,
is gone.
that in fact this is this isn't Johnson being attacked and his regime crumbling. This is Johnson getting rid of the flotsam in order to survive.
I think so, yeah, because a lot of the people on those backbenchers don't like Cummings, and ultimately I think he's trying to build up some support with them again. You know, I think there was reason to maybe distance himself from these type of characters, you know, especially the Leave campaign type group, and get back to the type of politics that he got into power on, you know, where he was this crazy character that you could associate with. And
Wanted
now
to
he's a
level up
worn out battery.
Yeah. Paul, thank you, Stuart. Paul, I worry because my feeling about Johnson is that he is an absolute sort of I can't think of the word disorganized is my word. I don't think he could run a Sunday school party, and do you worry, especially in the run up to Brexit, that he has ditched the organizer, the person who got things done, and sort of are you frightened that now that we're going to see a period where we just enter an even greater period of chaos than we've been involved in?
No, I don't think it can get any worse because, you know, some people say that a bad plan well executed is better than a good plan executed badly. This is a bad plan that's been executed badly all the way through, being propped up by a ridiculously lenient media, a ridiculously chummy media, and there's a big aspect of this story that we haven't discussed here, which speaks to the juvenile nature of this entire project. So the spokesperson for Boris Johnson that he advertised because he didn't want to do the daily briefings, and it turned out that they appointed Allegra Staton, who used to work for the BBC and used to be Peston's person who was on the Twitter board, and she would read out the tweets and things like that. And she's a very staunch conservative.
There's a future for you yet, Samantha.
Yeah. See,
You're a comments reader. You're going to end up being
the left wing Allegra. But but anyway,
but a very left wing name.
But then she's so like obviously she's a huge supporter of Boris Johnson. She's a huge supporter of the Conservative Party, and she's a really good friend of Carrie Symonds. So what happened here was when she was appointed into that position, Lee Kane and Dominic Cummings didn't want that appointment and were upset about it because she wasn't interviewed for the post apparently, and they wanted someone else for this post. But you know, Carrie Symonds is friends with Allegra, so she got the post. And then one of them, apparently some texts were sent about, and they were saying that Carrie Symonds is really domineering and rings him 20 times a day during meetings and expects him to leave important meetings so that she can talk to him. And they started referring to her as Princess Nutnuts or something like that, which sounds like one of those awful, remember that episode of Blackadder where they had those awful public school names for people and those really posh nicknames they come up with? And so that's what that sounds like. Sometimes apparently it was spelled in emojis. So this is how juvenile it is. This is what the falling out's about. You can drive to Barnard Castle to test your eyes. You can completely undermine the faith of the public. You can dish out public contracts worth billions to your friends that don't do anything, that completely fail. And you can defend that. You can defend absolutely everything that this awful administration has done. But don't diss my lass. You say anything about my lass, then you're out. It's embarrassing.
Because do you really think? I mean, I realise there's political points to be scored here, but do you really think that government operates at that level? Do you really think that there wasn't some? I give people much more credit than you do. Sort of, I think that there is a strategy there, and I think it's to do with Brexit, and I think it's to do with blame shifting for Brexit. So drag you back to the question: do you see any kind of change of approach as we, particularly, it's going to be in whether or not we crumble in the negotiations, isn't it? Sort of gives the negotiators more room to yield during the Brexit negotiations. do you not see some kind, I mean, and sort of I'm prepared to be wrong on that one, and be off beam, but sort of, I'm just testing your great experience and knowledge on this. Do you not think that there is a strategy behind this and that it's connected to Brexit in some way?
No, I think that their hand will be forced on Brexit. I think we're going to have to get a deal now that because America won't be supportive of what we will do with Joe Biden. So they will not be supportive of the undermining of the Good Friday Agreement. It will not be accepted internationally now. So you'll have both the European Union and the USA totally against the idea of undermining that really important agreement, which the Conservatives were quite happy to do, seemingly. So they will have no choice on that. Now, that might have caused some friction in some sort of way. I don't think there's any grand plan here. I think they're flying by the seat of the pants. They just say things. They say things like to get elected. They've been in campaign mode even since the election. Everything about them is to get elected. It's not to. It's being in power that's important to them, not exercising power for good. That's
Right.
what's important to them.
Thank you so much, there, people. Thank you for your insightful comments. Sort of, just one word, and the first word you speak will be this word. Sort of happy about it, or dubious about it. Sort of, is this a good thing or a bad thing, Paul?
Neither.
That's cool. Stuart?
Skeptical.
Thank you. Very good word. Sam?
Good thing.
Good for you. Righty-ho. There we have it.
That's what I'm told.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in our guest, but sort of if you're listening and remember that we have our comments line going, what do you think about the Cummings affair? Are you in favour of his departure? Do you miss him? Do you feel that the Tories have now lost their direction? Make your comments and Sam will pick them up when she runs the comments section at the end of the show. And now. We don't have a jingle for this, do we?
No, we should get one. If there's any budding musicians out there who want to make a little jingle for this,
this is the introduction. Thank you, Paul. This is the introduction of the candidate's candidate. So these are the people. Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
These are people who aren't going to be candidates necessarily at the next election. They are candidates to be accepted by the various branches to be candidates at the next election. And what we're doing is we're bringing these people in front of the public. Hello, it's great to see you, Heidi, one after the other. And so, by the way, Heidi, no, I'm not going to ask you that. I was going to say which seat might you be wanting to go to, but you might have some sort of glad. So that's a no because we might be asking you to reveal your grand strategy for power. So
I don't have one. You'll be disappointed because I don't.
Where in the constituency do you live, Heidi?
I live in Wingate, but we already have a fantastic representative in Wingate. But I am lucky enough to support families all over County Durham. So I was looking more at Sedgefield because I do have quite a few families there.
To the world, yes, that's great. Well, it's great to see you. I'm going to ask you the same questions we ask everybody. And the first one is, it's just great to see you, Heidi. Why do you want to be a Labour County Councillor?
Well, I think every single person that gets involved will say the same thing. I really do like to help people. It's definitely something that I'm passionate about. I would say my main focus is advocating for those with disabilities and their families, not just the person themselves, but also the carers that surround that, the siblings, the kind of knock-on effect that it has. And I think I would just love to be able to get out there on a more broad scale and be able to help people who struggle to access certain services or perhaps don't know about them. So I think I'd really love to get involved with a lot of the grassroots organisations and support the work that they're doing, perhaps with funding or finding them volunteers, or perhaps collaborating with them on certain things. I think I would just, it's something I'm already really passionate about. It's something that I already do day to day. So I think I would just like to do that on a broader scale.
So what you're saying is is this an adult services scrutiny committee that the children?
Well, I mean, I'm all for supporting adults, because I think, you know, there's a lot of amazing groups out there that do support adults, but the group that I was one of the trustees for, and one of the founders, is the Sensory Place, and that is a group for families of children with disabilities. And we were initially 0 to 18, but I think we are looking to up that a little bit. And we do various courses for the parents to give them the tools to know how to deal with the challenges that life has thrown at them. We offer family events to really build a community, which has been amazing. We have lovely families that attend. You know, we've been really, really lucky. It's gone from strength to strength, and we've only been running for just over a year. So it's absolutely brilliant.
Heidi, we need people like you, because you've got the Children's Scrutiny Committee, you've got the Corporate Parenting Committee, and of course you've got Safeguarding of Children, which are absolutely key, critical county council functions. Thank you so much for answering my question. Paul, you've got a question.
Yeah, but I think it's already been really, really well answered. So my question was going to be, what particular thing would you like to would you seek to do as a county councillor if you were elected? But you've already spoken a lot about that. But if there's anything else you'd like to add, then please feel free.
Not really. My answer would pretty much just be the same: to advocate for obviously my passion, which is those with disabilities, but also families who perhaps they're single parents, or perhaps they're struggling, they want to get back in education and not quite sure how to do that. You know, because there's all these amazing services out there, but if nobody is pointing in the right direction, you're not sure where to go. So yeah.
I think we just found the next portfolio holder for children's services, but don't tell all. Finally, Sam, what's your question?
I know we are supposed to be very unbiased on this, but this is the second time I've seen Heidi today.
You'll be sick of me today.
I'm so excited about the quality of candidates you guys are pulling up in Sedgefield. I mean, not to do down Bishop Auckland at all, but you know, these are amazing people. My question is, what campaigns have you been involved in, whether it's inside the Labour Party or outside the Labour Party? Is there anything in particular you can think of that you've done, that you've run a campaign on, that's been successful or not successful?
I think within the Labour Party, obviously, I haven't had much of an opportunity because of COVID. I did do a bit of the phone banking, and Laura Daly got me involved with the campaigns group, which is brilliant, but I can't take any credit. She does it all. But I would say, obviously, I'm really, really proud of the Sensory Place. We started off as a group meet up at South Durham Gymnastics, and we just had a sensory session there, and the kids absolutely loved it. Sorry, my dog's come to see what all the fuss is about. And we've done several sessions there. We've had Macathon courses, sleep workshops, mental health first aid. Were you on our mental health first aid, Samantha?
I was mental health.
Yes, I remember now. Yes.
That was sensitive.
So we've been able to team up. I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is because of COVID, like everybody else, all of our plans went, down the river. We couldn't do anything. And myself and the other trustees were thinking, how are we going to support these families who have been cut off from any support they already have? So we had fundraised for another event that we were going to do, when we created 70 sensory bags, and we hand delivered those during the first lockdown around County Durham and Sunderland. And then there was a brilliant company in Sunderland called BGL who heard about what we were doing, and they've always been massive supporters for us. And they donated us £1,000, and we made another 100 sensory bags. And we delivered those all over County Durham. And then as we were approaching the summer, we were thinking, what are we going to do? Because we know from our own children, it's very difficult to keep them entertained. So we came up with our 6 weeks of summer scheme, and we had collection points all around County Durham. And every week we had a different activity. So we had sensory trays, we had Build-A-Bear, we had make your own pizza. It was brilliant because it was so family orientated, and the feedback that we got was absolutely fantastic. And as we slowly started to come out of lockdown, the feedback that we were getting is that parents were worried about their children's mental health. Obviously, some of them struggle with mobility issues, so they hadn't been out as much. So we teamed up with Adventure Access in Seaham, and we were able to offer kayaking, rafted canoeing, paddleboarding, and we teamed up with Wild Track Wilderness, and we're able to offer forest schools. And I just think during a time that was really awful, we were able to help some families create some lovely memories. So I would say that's the thing that I would be most proud of, that I've helped to put together.
Thank you so much. And to anybody listening in any of the branches around the constituency, I'm just going to point out one, organisational skills, and secondly, the ability to coordinate other groups and get them all involved. Absolutely stunning contribution. Thank you so much. We of course incredibly interested in the things that are going on in the background. We don't really look at you at all. We look at the sort of what's the house like? Are those balloons in the background there?
Yes, it was recently my son's 10th birthday, and he is very
oh my golly gracious!
So he's got a ball pool and some balloons. That was his
Lovely.
thing that he wanted, and he was thrilled.
Tell him that we say happy birthday. That's the first thing. And the second thing, is that a golden retriever?
Yes, it is. He's lovely, but he's such a little tinker.
And I don't know if he was a golden retriever is a decent and good person. It's been so lovely seeing you, Heidi. Thank you
for having me.
So much. If I don't know how to throw you out, so you're going to have to leave of your own volition. But thank you so much for being on our show, and God bless. Bye. And all the very best.
Oh, man.
Wow, fantastic, eh?
Oh.
There's no wonder she got on the panel. Right, okay. Here we go. That is just such exciting music, and it takes us into, I think, the most exciting bit of the show, because I want to start. In fact, you chose Cummings. I didn't choose Cummings. I would have chosen Cummings. I would have chosen this, and because the next question we're going to address, the second one in your list that you told us to look at, is how dangerous is Trump? So I'm going to kick off with Paul on this. How much fighting do we need to be of Trump?
So the background to this is that he is saying that the election was rigged, or sort of very strongly hinting at it. There was he's been a bit all over the place on it. So he tweeted the other day that Democrats used to complain that elections were rigged, and then he came in and they had the most legitimate elections ever, and there was no corruption whatsoever, apart from what the Democrats did, which was rig the election. So kind of a bit all over the place with that tweet. But yeah, he keeps on claiming this, and Facebook have started to fight back against this. Twitter have been putting little tags on his posts saying that these claims of corruption are disputed. But he is he is kind of undermining the democracy of the election. He's undermining the faith in the democracy of the election. But I would be quite cautious in saying that this is just a Trump problem, because we're very, very much focused on what Trump does and things. Trump is a symptom of the problem. Trump got elected based upon the idea that every politician seemed to be the same. Every politician is being controlled by the lobby, which is kind of big business, corporations. They weren't really seeing a difference between those two. So this kind of more radical idea of blaming everything on Mexicans kind of worked out for Trump, because they'd lost faith in the rest of the process. So whether or not this is like, whether Trump is dangerous, it's clear that he is dangerous. However, he was allowed to be dangerous by a system in which normal, everyday people felt that their voice was not being heard, and corporate lobbyists are controlling absolutely everything. And I think that needs to be brought into this context.
Stuart, I mean, do you? I mean, is this just Trump thrashing around, having a tantrum like a 2-year-old, or sort of? Do you, like me, always suspect that there's something much cleverer going on here, and that he has a real thought that he can stay in power? I mean, that's the danger. Sort of, what do you feel about that?
I mean, he is very childlike in what's going on, but America does have a history of at least a few people trying to stay in power. I know that there was a couple of cases where there was once 3 governors for the same state, and they all fought over who was getting the job after the original guy died, and it eventually went to his son. And I think Americans like to cling on to these ideas that all these things are still possible. So I think he has a real vision that he might get an extra month out of it, and that month might mean millions of quid in tax savings, shall we say, for himself.
You think that he's wanting to stay in power? I mean, I read an article in the Guardian whereby sort of, unlike this country where the vote determines who gets in, in America they have a system whereby the vote is supposed to determine who goes to the electoral college, and the electoral college decides who's going to be the president. What happens is that the state legislature looks at the vote and then decides whether the 5, 10, 20 delegates they sent to the electoral college are Democrat or are Trump or Biden. And what this article suggested was that the Democrats and Trump are working very hard on the Republican legislatures to try and persuade them that it was a rigged election, so that they will not send Democrat delegates to the electoral college, but they'll send Republican delegates on the ground that the election was rigged. And that article suggested that Trump had a very good chance of staying in power by that tactic. Now, sort of, what do you reckon to that? Do you think that, is this just silly theorizing?
I think he intentionally wants to hang on. I think that he understands that he won't last, but every day that he manages to have this image of being a winner, you know, is worth money to him. You know, at the end of the day, his business kind of depends on him being seen as a do-well and aspirational. And if he concedes and says, look, I'm a loser, he's going to take a hit financially one way or another. And every day that he stays in power beyond what he thinks might happen is a day that he can get away with just a little bit more of what's going on in the background.
Is he going to be sent to prison when his term comes to an end?
I would think not. I don't have that much trust in America actually perhaps doing the right thing there and investigating him properly. Rich people generally tend to pay their way out of serving any real time in the American system.
Thank you. And finally, Sam, is Biden going to be any better? How hopeful are you for Biden?
Oh, yeah. I made the mistake of watching Fahrenheit 9/11 or 11/9 or whatever it is the other day, and that did not give me loads of hope for the future, I'm afraid. Because I think last week I did say, like, you know, politicians like Trump are a consequence of politicians like Biden. I think that's true, and I really, really hope that Biden proves me wrong and really engages with the downtrodden people who Trump really spoke to. You know, it's really hard to have hope for anything at the moment, but you kind of you have to, don't you? Especially when you're somebody like me and you've wedded yourself to a political party and you think, God, we need change, and the only way to get change is to get elected, and you hope that once people have that power, they do push to actually make change and not maintain a global neoliberal status quo.
He's said that he's going to sign up to the climate thing immediately he gets to power. He said that he's going to rejoin the WHO immediately he gets to power. He gave a very strong speech recently when he said he's going to give more power to the unions. What's coming out of his mouth is good. Sort of, do you fear that? I mean, he can't really back off on those things, can he? These are all sort of, I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I hope not, but unfortunately, that just like the stuff that Trump is doing, you know, being squeamish about making real change and sticking up for people, that also just continues this erosion of faith in politicians. So and that's one of the reasons why Trump was so popular among his people, because they thought he was pushing past the noise and making change, even if the world was looking on with like a horrified expression. Well, you know, we want the kids out of the cages, we want ICE abolished, you know. Those are the things that we need to see to believe that real change is happening.
Andy has 2 dogs, which is, but not golden retrievers. Paul.
There's plenty of good that he can do, which is quite obvious, like those really extreme bad things. But remember, it wasn't like Donald Trump wasn't the person who set up those cages. There were children in cages under Obama. You know, so I do recommend the film that Samantha recommended there, Fahrenheit 11/9. It is outstanding. But we've got to think as well, wealth inequality has increased ever since Ronald Reagan got into power. Every presidential term, wealth inequality has increased, and it's to do with the increased financialization and corporatization of the world. You know, so there are plenty of people really benefiting from the system, and they're the people who are putting money into politics. They're the people who are putting people like Biden or Trump, depending on who they want to do. Now, this Wall Street put more money into Biden this year than they did into Trump. They do hedge the bets. They do pick both. They do give money to both sides. So either way, they've got an ally, but they gave more to the Democrats this year. And that makes me think, is there going to be systemic change? Will that progressive voice in the USA, like the Squad, you know, people who have these ideas about how we're going to help normal people, not corporate lobbyists, how are they going to have their voice heard? And that's Biden's big challenge. Will he learn the lessons of what Obama perhaps hoped to put right and then didn't? Or will we continue with the status quo? Like, I'm worried about where politics is now, where it's either status quo or far right. That seems to be the argument now, and that seems to be the argument in the UK as well. It's like kind of, oh, well, things are great now, so vote this way. Actually, things are awful and it's immigrants' fault, so vote this way. That is not a good choice for me.
Thank you very much indeed. If you're listening to that and you've got thoughts about how we can give people a greater say without giving the right a greater say, that would be very interesting to hear what you've got to say. Or maybe you disagree and think that the answer is far right politics. Sort of, what's your thoughts about Trump? What are your thoughts about Biden? Share with us. Sam will read them out. Finally, the Great Acre and Midridge Partnership and all the other partnerships as well, the AAPs, have been discussing for the past few weeks how to make County Durham healthier and wealthier. And sort of there's 145 million pounds worth of investment going to be made by the County Council in regenerating the county. The council has decided what's going to happen, but there's another 20 million going free, and they came and they asked people, what should we be spending it on to make the county healthier and wealthier? If you've got any ideas, listener, jot them down on the chat. What's your key idea for making us healthier or making us wealthier? But I'm going to go round my team. We've only got a few minutes left, so it's brief comments only, people. Let's start with Wealthier. Stuart, you first. What's your big idea for making the county and people of the county wealthier?
I think we need to kind of take back control of community assets. You know, things like our town centres, our community spaces are really important to some of the, you know, wealth issues we have. Definitely bringing jobs in-house in councils, providing, you know, local people to have local jobs that pay well, that, you know, have the right kind of support. You know, just community wealth building.
Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant point. Sam, making the county wealthier, your big idea.
So similar to what Stuart said, but on a slight tangent, we need to take some of the shop units into public ownership and try and get people who are working from home to run pop-up shops in those shop units. I was happily told that Shildon has done quite well compared to other town centres during the COVID crisis because of our independent shops. Because big chains find it very easy to close down shops and pull out of town centres. Because we've got so many independents, we haven't been hitting that same way. So we need to nurture those very resilient independent businesses.
Thank you, and hopefully we will. Paul, your big idea for a wealthier Durham, please.
Sadly, it involves time travel and going back to last December and voting a different way and implementing the green industrial revolution that was going to create thousands of high quality jobs for left behind communities like we have in the Northeast, which was an absolutely outstanding policy that for some reason wasn't mentioned in the media, that we're going to create thousands of skilled, well-paid jobs in green technology for former coal field communities. That would have been nice.
It would have been brilliant, and thank you. Okay, next thing, your advice for Councillor Simon Hennig, the leader of the County Council, as he says, how we can make County Durham healthier. Let's go backwards. Okay, this means it's more difficult for you because they'll pinch the other ideas too. Paul, how can we make a healthier County Durham? Yes, I did just interrupting because in seconds, massive health inequalities, just as great as the wealth inequalities. Sort of, I think it's 12 years in life expectancy between the worst place, the most unhealthy place in the county, and the leafy suburbs of some parts of the county. 12 years life difference. How can we make County Durham a healthier place, Paul?
I suppose I'm coming up with a papering over the cracks policy here, because really what we need to do is we need to make people work shorter. We need to make like automation of work in our favor, so that people aren't doing very difficult work, which shortens the lifespan, and also people who are in poverty having a better diet would really help. So making people less poor would be really good. But like aside from that, I'm thinking increased cycling infrastructure to give people the opportunity to cycle not on the roads. So people who get angry at cyclists on the roads can be appeased and not try to kill people who are riding the bikes. And then because that seems proportionate.
Such fun.
And it'd be nice to see some nice, safe cycling infrastructure to encourage people to get out on the bikes and enjoy themselves. We've seen a lot of people taking up cycling and running during lockdown, so it'd be nice to use that as a form of transport, much in the same way that they do in Amsterdam.
The county council has a cycling and walking policy, and it has certain areas where it's focusing on improving cycling, and it's also got lots of money from the government to do so. We've ploughed a lot of money in just recently into that. Sam, yeah, I saw your face fall as Paul went through about 5 or 6 ideas in a very short period of time. So what of the remaining ideas, what's your big one big idea for making County Durham healthier?
Sure. So at the moment, I am trying to be more physically healthy, and I'm trying to bring some other people who are similar to me, female in their 30s, yes, and the obstacles are quite easy to see, actually, from the women that I've talked to of my age. They want something they can do that is free, that is fun, that they can do in a group, and the obstacles are around self-confidence and around childcare issues, so dealing with school runs and things. So those obstacles seem very easy to overcome in terms of having a group, body positive exercise class that maybe has a creche attached to it, or that can be done with kids around. Yes.
Brilliant.
Think about those things.
What a fabulous! That is really good. That is really good. I'm long past the time when I'm going to do any exercise, Sam.
Well, it's all right. I wasn't inviting you, John. I'm only allowed to invite one person per session.
God bless you. Thank you for those ideas. And Stuart, last word of the show to you. Idea, how can we make County Durham a healthier place?
I think we need to assess what we've already got. We've got some really great facilities, but I think people maybe aren't being connected with them. Like Chilton has some really brilliant tennis courts, like really high grade stuff. And we need to be establishing, proper classes, opportunities for people to go and experience them and use them, because they already own them. They already belong to the people. And we just need to find ways of getting people there to enjoy them.
I was on a group discussing the history of the new towns, and one of the things that came up, that the new towns were built around the idea of being green and green spaces and the connection with nature and being healthier. But in fact, there's some of the places in the country with the worst health outcomes. And what's gone wrong? What's gone wrong? Why aren't all those facilities making us healthier in new towns rather than unhealthier? And you've hit the nail on the head there. It's the fact it's developing that connection which makes people access those things because they own them anyway. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Stuart, for that thought. Well, wasn't that good today, people? Again, as I always say, what an amazing team. What ideas come out of their head. Aren't we privileged to be able to listen to them? This is where we say goodbye to you, and many people just leave us and we don't see you for the rest of the evening. We're going to play out with our theme song, which is No Pass Around, They Shall Not Pass. And but we come back for half an hour or so afterwards. Samantha reads out your comments, and we make some good. Sometimes we don't do this right, people. Sometimes it's far too much us talking and not so much the comments. I'm going to make it tonight. It's got to be about people's comments and what they've been saying, and we'll celebrate your ideas. Thank you for listening. You're welcome to come back after the song if you want. Bye bye. Let's all say goodbye, people. Bye bye.
Bye.
Keep the red flag flying there.